Independence is often misunderstood as isolation, but in truth, it is the very soil in which self-respect grows. When we talk about love, we tend to imagine it as the merging of two lives into one, as if losing ourselves somehow makes the bond stronger. But what often gets overlooked is that the strength of any relationship depends on the strength of the individuals who enter into it. Without independence, we risk entering love not as equals, but as seekers, hungry for validation, desperate for completion, dependent on another person to affirm our worth. That is not love, that is dependency disguised as affection. When you cultivate independence, you cultivate self-respect. You begin to recognize that your value does not hinge on someone else's approval, that your happiness cannot be outsourced. This is not about building walls or keeping people out. It's about building a solid ground beneath your own feet so that when you choose to love someone, it is a choice made from abundance rather than from lack. Love then becomes an offering, not a transaction. You are not asking someone to fill your emptiness. You are inviting them to share in your wholeness. Philosophically, we might say independence allows us to hold love in its purest form, free of the distortions of fear and insecurity. If I love you because I am afraid of being alone, that love is fragile. If I love you because I respect myself and therefore respect you, that love is resilient. Independence strips away the illusion that another person is responsible for saving us, and in doing so, it frees both partners from the burden of playing roles they were never meant to carry. Psychologically, independence strengthens boundaries, and boundaries are not barriers. They are the architecture of dignity. They allow us to engage without losing ourselves, to give without resentment, and to receive without guilt. When two people stand on their own ground, love ceases to be a dependency and becomes a partnership. It ceases to be about clinging and becomes about choosing again and again from a place of strength. And perhaps that is the real power of independence in love. It transforms the question from, what can you give me? Into, what can we build together? That shift is what makes love not just possible, but unshakable. Because only when you respect yourself enough to stand alone are you truly ready to stand beside someone else. Love is often romanticized as belonging to one another, but belonging can easily blur into possession. And possession, no matter how tenderly disguised, weakens love instead of strengthening it when we try to own another person, when we subtly control who they are, what they do, or how they move in the world. We are not really loving them. We are loving the version of them that serves our needs. That isn't love. That is fear wearing the mask of intimacy. Independence is what prevents love from slipping into this territory. It reminds us that the person we care for is not ours to mold, not ours to dictate, not ours to define. They are their own being with their own voice, their own dreams, and their own way of existing. Respecting that truth is what allows love to breathe. Because when love turns into ownership, it suffocates under the weight of control. When love honors independence, it flourishes in the light of trust. Philosophically, this distinction is vital. Possession reduces the beloved to an object, a thing to be managed or contained. Love without possession, on the other hand, is rooted in recognition. It sees the other not as property, but as a partner, not as a shadow, but as a whole and autonomous person. This kind of love requires courage because it means letting go of control. But in letting go, we create the very conditions for intimacy to deepen. Psychologically, when we release the need to possess, we also release much of the jealousy, insecurity, and silent competition that poison relationships. Independence reassures both people that they are free, that they are with each other not because they must be, but because they choose to be. That choice is powerful. It transforms love from a cage into a canvas, a space where both partners can grow side by side without limiting one another. And perhaps that is the most beautiful paradox. The less we try to hold on tightly, the stronger the bond becomes. Because what we truly value, we do not need to control. We simply need to honor it, nurture it, and allow it to exist freely. Real love does not say, "You are mine." Real love says, "You are yours, and I choose you still." One of the most overlooked aspects of love is emotional responsibility. Too often, we enter relationships hoping another person will carry the weight of our feelings as though they could soothe every fear, resolve every insecurity, or fill every void we haven't faced within ourselves. But placing that responsibility on someone else doesn't just weaken us. It places an impossible burden on them. Independence teaches us to hold ourselves accountable for our emotions, to navigate our inner storms with maturity rather than relying on someone else to steady the boat for us. When we become emotionally responsible, we stop confusing love with rescue. Love should not be a constant fixing of one another's wounds. Of course, support is natural and necessary, but there is a difference between being supported and being saved. The first comes from strength, the second comes from dependence. And dependence, while it may feel comforting at first, creates fragility. Because the moment one person falters, the entire structure collapses. Philosophically, this shift in responsibility is profound. It challenges the illusion that someone else holds the key to our peace of mind. Happiness cannot be outsourced, and security cannot be delegated. Independence forces us to confront the truth that the work of self-understanding and self-healing is ours alone. When both people commit to that work, the relationship transforms. It is no longer a place of escape, but a place of genuine connection. Two whole beings choosing to share, rather than two incomplete beings clinging for survival. Psychologically, the impact is just as powerful. A person who takes responsibility for their emotions communicates more clearly, argues more fairly, and forgives more honestly. They don't demand perfection because they understand their partner is not responsible for regulating their every mood. This creates resilience instead of fragile bonds that crack under stress. You get a love that can withstand challenges because both people know how to stand on their own feet, even while holding hands. The real strength of emotional independence is this: it doesn't make love colder, it makes love freer. When you own your emotions, you allow love to be about connection, not survival. Because only when you stop asking someone else to carry your heart for you can you truly offer it to them without fear. Independence also means refusing to let love be the boundary of your growth. Too often, people enter relationships and unconsciously allow them to become the limit of who they are, as if the couple itself is the destination rather than the starting point for further evolution. But love is not meant to replace growth. It is meant to magnify it. When two people continue to pursue their own paths of learning, creating, and becoming, the relationship becomes richer because it is constantly renewed with fresh energy, new perspectives, and untold possibilities. Think of it this way: if both people stop evolving, the relationship risks becoming stagnant. A repetition of the same conversations, the same patterns, the same ways of being. But when independence fuels personal growth, each person brings newness back into the shared space. You don't just fall in love once, you fall in love again and again with the new versions of each other that emerge through growth. Independence ensures that love never has to rely on nostalgia to survive. It can thrive in the present, always being fed by who each of you are becoming. Philosophically, this reflects an important truth. The self is never finished. We are not static beings, we are works in progress. And when we honor that in ourselves and in our partners, love becomes less about possession of who someone is now and more about walking alongside who they are becoming. That shift creates depth because it recognizes love as a journey, not a fixed state. Psychologically, this independence-driven growth also prevents the subtle resentment that arises when one person feels held back. When both partners have the freedom to pursue dreams, hobbies, or ambitions, they feel fulfilled not just as lovers, but as individuals. And that fulfillment overflows into the relationship itself. Instead of asking, "Are you enough for me?" both people can say, "I am enough for myself, and because of that, I can give more to you." The truth is, love is strongest when it exists between two people who are not afraid to grow beyond it, yet still choose to grow within it. Because the most enduring love is not about who you were when you met. It is about who you continue to become together. One of the great paradoxes of love is that freedom creates closeness. We often assume that the more time we spend together, the tighter the bond becomes, as if proximity alone could measure intimacy. But the truth is, love that demands constant proof or constant presence often signals insecurity rather than connection. Independence reshapes this dynamic. It allows both people the space to choose each other freely again and again, not out of fear of being alone, but out of a genuine desire to be together. That freedom is what transforms love into something deeper, something that thrives on trust rather than control. When you know you are free to walk away, but you stay, that choice carries far more weight than obligation ever could. Independence makes that choice possible. It allows love to be active, alive, and intentional. Not a default, not a dependency, but a conscious act of commitment. And this is where intimacy grows strongest. Not in the clinging, but in the knowing that two whole beings are meeting without coercion, without pretense, without the pressure to complete one another. Philosophically, freedom is the condition for authentic love. If love is forced, it ceases to be love, it becomes duty. Real love can only exist in the space where both people are free to leave and yet both decide to stay. That is what makes the connection genuine. It is not survival driven. It is choice driven. And in that choice lies the deepest kind of intimacy, one built not on necessity, but on trust and respect. Psychologically, independence dissolves the fears that so often corrode relationships. Fear of abandonment, fear of losing oneself, fear of not being enough. When both people trust in their own independence, they no longer demand constant reassurance or sacrifice their individuality to keep the other close. Instead, they build a bond where distance doesn't weaken love, it strengthens it. Where differences don't divide, they enrich. The relationship stops being a cage and becomes a sanctuary, a place where both can rest without restriction. And perhaps that is the greatest gift of independence. It turns love into a choice worth making every single day, because love is never strongest when it traps us. It is strongest when it frees us, and yet we stay. Lasting love is not built on intensity alone. It is built on resilience. Passion can ignite a relationship, but without the grounding of independence, that fire often burns out quickly. Independence is what allows love to stretch and bend without breaking, to endure the inevitable seasons of change that life brings. Because no relationship, no matter how deep, exists in a vacuum. Circumstances shift, people grow, challenges arise. If the bond is built on dependency, these shifts feel like earthquakes. But if it is built on independence, they become opportunities to adapt and grow stronger together. Independence provides breathing room. It ensures that love doesn't collapse under the pressure of constant closeness or unrealistic expectations. When both people know they can stand alone, the relationship is no longer about survival. It becomes about choice and renewal. There is space for honesty, for difficult conversations, for individuality to remain intact. And that space is what keeps love alive, not in spite of change, but through it. Through it. Philosophically, independence gives love a kind of timeless quality. Dependency ties love to circumstance. I need you because I can't live without you. But independence frees love from that fragility. I want you because my life is already full, and it is fuller with you in it. This is a love that is not threatened by time, distance, or growth, because it does not rely on possession. It relies on presence. It is not about clinging to what is, but embracing what can be. Psychologically, this foundation creates stability. A relationship where both partners are secure within themselves is not derailed by every argument or shaken by every disappointment. Instead, challenges become a test of strength, not a source of collapse. This kind of love doesn't crumble under pressure. It adapts, it learns, it endures. And endurance, in the truest sense, is not about staying together at all costs. It is about continually choosing one another in new and evolving ways. The beauty of independence is that it doesn't just make love possible in the present. It makes it sustainable for the future, because love is not proven by how tightly we hold on, but by how gracefully we last.